Thank you all for joining this presentation of our work, which is concerned with crafting, communality, and computing, or as we subtitle it, building on existing strengths to support a vulnerable population. Our overarching interest is in issues of power and authority, particularly in working with underserved communities. The high-level vision of the work is to contribute to our collective understanding of what is the right thing to do and how do we know we've done it. Here, we narrow down to a particular aspect. We add to the literature on ways to work with a vulnerable community that are both respectful and practical. Today, we're reporting on one intervention in a long-term engagement with sex trafficking survivors supported by an anti-trafficking organization in Nepal. Nepal is a major site for human trafficking. It is estimated that anywhere between 6,000 to 12,000 girls and women are trafficked annually. In fact, the open border with India in the south is one of the busiest sites of human trafficking in the world. People rescued from sex trafficking are vulnerable in several ways. Most of them are young. They have limited formal education. Many are shunned by their families and they have very limited sources of social support. Most of their social support comes from anti-trafficking NGOs. NGOs provide survivors with a protected living home, skills-based training, and support during reintegration. We've been working with one such NGO in Nepal. Following Nepali practice, we shall call the women we work with sister survivors in this talk. There are two basic strategies for figuring out what the right thing is to do to support reintegration of sister survivors. The first is deficit focused. Most work with vulnerable population in international development focuses exclusively on addressing needs and deficits. However, this can be a problem. Focusing exclusively on needs or deficits perpetuates dependency. It robs agency from the people involved. In fact, anti-trafficking organizations, including those in Nepal, have been characterized as part of the rescue industry for the ways they have perpetuated need. In contrast, asset-based approaches focus on the strengths possessed by the community members. The key here is to identify the strengths possessed by the community and seek ways to build upon them. As Alison Matthey and others argue, asset-based approaches encourage power within, power to, and power with. They actively resist power over the community. Interest in asset-based approaches has been growing in the SIGCHI community. For example, Cho et al.'s work with low-income Latino families in Southern California and Karusala and Vishwanath et al.'s work in low-resource learning environment in Mumbai, India used asset-based approaches. We believe that asset-based approaches are key to respectful and pragmatic community development. Everything that we are going to say in this talk follows from a commitment to an asset-based approach. Using the novel method of social photo elicitation, our earlier ethnographic study uncovered two elements of strength possessed by the sister survivors. The first was their crafting skills. The NGO provided training to all sister survivors to work on local handicrafts as part of the reintegration process. On the one hand, the crafting skills have potential to generate income. On the other, these economic benefits were tenuous. The sister survivors and the staff member told us that the sale of the handicrafts was declining in the local market. Despite that, we saw that there could be an opportunity to build on the knowledge of crafting towards other skills that may be more enduring in the long run. A second strength was the strong bond between the sister survivors, fostered by the shared living situation, the awareness of the past, shared work, and the mutual support they provided each other. This strength was also tenuous. The sister survivors expected that they would lose connection after leaving the shelter home when they have to move out across the country and live lives with minimal privacy. In theory, technology could help support the sister survivors towards more enduring strengths that could hold value after they leave the shelter home. But precisely how? The sister survivors had limited digital and text literacy. None were attending schools. only 3 reported being comfortable enough to read a simple SMS text. Earlier, the NGO had tried to introduce computers and Photoshop to a group of sister survivors. The sister survivors found the experience overwhelming. S3 lamented that she had never touched a laptop before to know what to do with it. Despite this prior experience, the sister survivors and the NGO expressed some positivity in introducing technology moving forward. Is there some way to build upon their strengths? Can the strengths of sociality and crafting skills provide an opportunity to introduce technology as part of a virtuous circle? Following on their strengths, interests, and attitudes, we thought that a gentler, more situated, and appropriable introduction to computing could at once build upon and reinforce existing strengths and open up other enduring ones. We developed a voice-annotated web application called Hamrokala, which translates to our craft in Nepali. We used crafting because that was one of the sister survivors' strengths. Hamrokala allowed the sister survivors to describe the handicrafts they had made and post it as if for sale. Hamrokala was hosted in a local network. It was not connected to the internet. We did this because we had not yet provided lessons or mechanism for online safety. To build upon the sister survivors' mutual bond, we added features to support social interaction with each other. They could look at other people's pieces, post audio comments, and even draw on them. Drawings could be shared, copied, modified, and reshared with the community. Hamrokala built on the strengths we had found amongst the sister survivors. It also took pains to offer a gentler introduction. First, all visual elements of Hamrokala had naturalistic voice annotation in a female voice. This voice played when a user hovered the mouse over those elements. This meant that the users did not have to read, although they could. Second, phrases common in digital parlance such as login and logout, which are also commonly used in Nepali websites, held little meaning to the sister survivors. Instead, we used elaborated phrases in the voice annotation. For example, instead of saying logout in Nepali, the web application said, "To leave this technology, press here." This use of voice annotation is not as much an information source as it is a conversation with the users. We conducted a 10-day workshop for a group of 9 sister survivors between the ages of 13 and 20. This was back when we could all be in the same room. Each session ran for around 2 hours. 4 laptops were shared in groups. Importantly, the voice annotation could be heard by others in the room. This meant that the groups were aware of others' activities. On the final day, each sister survivor explained Hamrokala to a staff member. This was done both to see how much the sister survivors had understood and, more critically, to promote a sense of agency. Overall, we found that the sister survivors were able to use Hamrokala. They created a large volume of digital artifacts during the workshop. Many stayed beyond the 2 hours to use the web application. On the final day, the staff members expressed astonishment with what the sister survivors were able to do with computers. Their astonishment also reflects that a very low bar had been established by prior failure of the NGO in introducing computers. Here, I would like to emphasize the value of careful introduction to technology because failure can erode the population's confidence and agency. The sister survivors helped one another to use computers. Their support seemed similar to what they provided each other when working on their crafts. Some explicitly asked for help, whereas others moved around the table, helping each other without being asked for. This seemed to help facilitate computer use and make it a fun activity. S2 commented, "With the sisters helping, computing was a fun, easy thing. Now, while showing it to the warden, I got scared and my hands shivered." Note that the mutual support helped reduce the fear around technology, but as we heard in S2's account, the fear was still there. Beyond mutual support, they seemed thrilled with the ability to share their work with one another. "Did it come?" was a commonly used phrase throughout the sessions to check whether their work could be seen by others. S9's joy, as you can see here, was shared by other sister survivors as well. Of course, there are elements of novelty effect at play here, but Photoshop was also novel and that did not work for them. The apparent interest in learning computing and own their work, which sustained over 10 days, suggests that there is more to it than novelty effect. Another thing that suggests it being more than novelty effect is the fact that the sister survivors actively negotiated what could be done in the space. For example, they set rule that nobody can like everything about other people's work and that one has to be critical about it. We don't want to romanticize collective practices though. The sister survivors also expressed the need for individual boundaries. This was most evident in that they declined the opportunity to modify other people's drawings. As S9 explained, changing the drawing, even a copy of the drawing, would violate the original artist's intent. We started with the overarching question of what was the right thing to do. We built on the sister survivors' strengths. Crafting was one of the strengths. The crafting context provided appropriable, respectful purpose for Hamrokala. It motivated their use of the technology and gave them comprehensible tasks. But it also elicited discussions about their crafting process, effort, and values. From this, we learned that they seem to feel only limited control over their crafting and their craft artifacts. This could also be seen in the fact that none of their audio comments critiqued the crafts, whereas all of the comments suggested ways to improve the video presentation. Later on, we discussed this issue with the trainers who promised and then started providing more control to the sister survivors. It is a small step, but the focus on assets allowed us to slowly push back on the issues in a respectful way. Now, I'd like to draw out some aspects of our work that we think could inform future work with vulnerable populations. 3 interdependent aspects of our work can help promote communality and technology adoption, especially for people with low digital literacy. First, the voice annotation publicized what one person was doing to the rest of the group. This made the activity perceptible and worked as an invitation for others to join in and help. The sister survivors' pre-existing mutual bond, coupled with the social interaction promoted by the technology, made the activity fun and engaging. These factors lowered the barrier to use. Second, not everyone will absorb information equally. Some may feel overwhelmed. But because the sister survivors worked in groups, some members of the group understood enough of its facets to make Hamrokala work. And more critically, the group had enough time to discuss and draw knowledge together towards meaningful action. Creating appropriable steps in activities seemed to help them in use. This was a stark contrast with their earlier experience with computers and Photoshop. Third, we argue that there is a need to build fun choices in the socio-technical system, even when a focus on economic well-being might indicate a more restrictive approach. Hamrokala was not only about posting items for sale. Communal sharing of drawing, crafts, and comments made room for playfulness and choices. While these may not translate directly to economic outcomes, the playful experience is valuable on its own and can facilitate adoption of technology moving forward. Technology can be a valuable tool if designed carefully. In our case, the technology seemed to provide a safe space for experimentation, one that encouraged negotiation and strengthened the sister survivors' bonds. The workshop and the accompanying technology provided a small room for the sister survivors to enact care for one another. When used carefully, technology can become part of a virtuous circle that extends existing strengths and adds elements of its own. Finally, we strongly argue for asset-based approaches. Focusing on the strengths that the community possesses can help empower the individuals within the structure. In doing so, we reiterate Sultana et al.'s argument for empowering vulnerable groups within the existing structure, rather than trying to dismantle the structure altogether. It is important to remember that our capabilities are limited. As we move into the future, the challenge is to build upon the asset-based approach to address larger systemic issues. Thus, there is a need for long-term, committed engagement with smaller but frequent and careful steps. There is much to be examined in proceeding in respectful and practical way. And with that, I'll conclude my talk. Thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or to continue the discussion on how we could work better with underserved communities across the globe.